what I think we have to come to terms with is when you have an inadequate affordable housing plan, and so you allow luxury developers to come into communities, take up a lot of land, build a lot of luxury housing with the promise of building affordable housing, then you find out that that affordable housing in places like East New York and other parts of our city, it turns out that that housing is unaffordable for the residents who live there. You end up creating a push into homeless shelters because people get forced out of their homes. And what we've seen is gentrification in so many communities of color because the rezonings were geared towards the developer and luxury housing. They were not geared towards actually building the low income housing. So we really did these rezonings and this homeless strategy backwards. I want to go back to a different model, a model that Mayor LaGuardia had when he built public housing. It was for low income New Yorkers that aspired to the middle class. And that was a great part of our housing history. The first public housing development was on the Lower East Side, it built in 1938, and it became aspirational for thousands of people. In fact, where I grew up in Washington Heights, whether it was Dyckman houses or Marble Hill houses, was very much a part of our community. But today, through the divestment of affordable housing, we have not yet figured out how to preserve what we have and build the next generation of low-income housing. And we need to do that because low-income housing are for the cab drivers, the cooks, the waiters, the daycare workers, the people who take care of our children and grandparents. And we have not built the housing that they need. And this is part of the crisis.
I have been the most outspoken and the most far-reaching in terms of my plans for racial equity in this city. On the day I announced my campaign, I proposed creating for the first time in the city's history a chief equity officer reporting directly to the mayor. And that's because I understand that every issue is an issue of equity. So we need to lead with that. Second, as I said earlier, we need to reorient the way we plan our city so that every New Yorker has within 15 minutes of their front door everything they need for a life of opportunity. It is deeply wrong and racist that you can predict the life chances of a child by the zip code that they grow up in. As mayor, that would change, and I would ensure every community is a 15-minute community. I would also make sure that we are taking enforcement of our laws deeply seriously. We've seen in the last few weeks hateful crimes against people based on what they look like, what language they speak, and what race they are.
Number one, we have failed to really pursue with our district attorney's offices on prosecuting landlords who are displacing tenants. You know, we need to look at those who damage property to have tenants removed, those who do illegal evictions, those who burn property. Those are all crimes already, but we don't pursue them in a real way. And then we need to criminalize when someone goes out and know they are aware that a unit should be on the affordable housing roll and they remove it off the affordable housing roll. They need to be criminalized, arrested, and charged substantial penalties, because right now we made the cost of taking these properties as a cost of doing business, and there's no incentive to stop. And then increase in minimum wage should be more than just a $15 an hour battle. We need to make sure that people could afford to live in the city and have a substantial prevailing and living wage. So $20 should be the mark that we are looking for. And then I believe that we need to focus on everything from giving real support around home ownership through Mitchell Lamas, through Nehemiah programs, and through other type of programs that will incentivize people going into not only affordable housing, but permanent home ownership. So as these communities change, we don't lose long-term tenants. And the Advantage program, we had it in place at one time. We need to reinstitute it. We saw a spike in homelessness when the Advantage program was removed from the state, federal, and city level. We need to look to keep people in their homes, not only to have them removed. And lastly, free civil legal services to whomever needs it so they can protect themselves in court. Bad acting landlords have attorneys, good acting tenants should have attorneys.
So, the premise of my candidacy and my campaign is that so many of the challenges that we're dealing with in New York City today were exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, but existed for long before that, and are systemic and structural in nature, and go back to issues of white supremacy, go back to issues of capitalism and profit, and that all of those things were created by human beings, and that we can make a decision to change those things as human beings. So it goes back to the economics and the focus that we have in the city and beyond on profits, the focus that we have on big businesses that come into our communities, exploit our labor, don't provide our workers with protections, don't provide our workers with benefits, but take profits from the work of our workers, and take the profits outside of our communities. So we can actually change our economic model to one that invests in our communities and allows our communities to develop and grow and keep wealth among themselves. We could develop a public bank. We can invest in worker-owned cooperatives so that the people from the community are the ones that are owning things. We can invest in our small and mid-sized businesses, because we know actually small and mid-sized businesses employ over 50% of the New York City workforce. They tend to be locally owned, and they invest in a circular economy, right? We're talking about changing things so that the people from our communities are the ones that begin to benefit. That's from the economic side. I can go down a rabbit hole on education, but I don't think you have time for that. And then there's the housing market and how we do housing, which is also based on profit and not based on making sure that the human needs of our people are being addressed and that people get access to opportunities to live in dignity.
It is critical that it is an affordability issue, but this is also an economic jobs issue. That we know that if you are not well educated and helped to ensure that you have a career rather than just a degree, that being able to afford housing in the city of New York is very challenging. We need to make sure that we are opening up those pathways coming out of high school as well as coming out of our CUNY system.
Disparities start in education, don't they? They start two places. They start in education and they start in the economy. We need to have people, we need to get people jobs. People lost jobs today. And my plan is to create 500,000 jobs so we can get people back to work. We can neither cut nor tax our way out of this situation. We need to give people jobs. They can have dignity. I had a job growing up. We need to give our kids summer jobs. So one, it's the economics. The other is education. Right now, the system's broken. Pre-K is good, but by the time many of our kids get to pre-K, they're already behind. So we need to start early. Affordable childcare, care for the parents. And then I want to make certain for my account that by the end of the third grade, every child in New York City can read. Why is that? Between 0 and the end of the third grade, our children are learning to read. After that, they're reading to learn. Far too many we don't teach to read by the end of the third grade. I want to ensure for my account that happens, and do math. And then beginning in the 6th grade, I want to expose them to different opportunities. They need to be digitally literate. They need to be financially literate. And then I need to expose them to the different opportunities. They can be welders or plumbers or software engineers or programmers or coders, but at least they have options. Get them a summer job starting in the 8th grade, a summer job so that they can experience the things to which they've been exposed. So by the time they graduate and do one of 3 things, they can either go to that career job for which they've been exposed and for which they've been trained. They go to a 2-year or 4-year college, but they have options. They got opportunities. We haven't given our children opportunities. 80% of the people in Rikers Island don't have a GED. And the ones who are 18 to 24, 1/3 of them read at the 5th grade level. That's what we need to fix. And for those people whom we haven't educated, we need to give them apprenticeships, vocational training. Let us give ourselves opportunities.